We are on the gridiron once again. But it looks like, one team and one team only today. But, we got to have a little humor in this situation, I feel like. Because, I just had a good conversation with some of the producers on the show today. A lot of mixed feelings about it, but, I just want to once again reiterate, and I feel like I didn't reiterate in the last segment. Political Gridiron has no association to what Bill Maloney said. It is just a mere opinion that he posted. It is him and him himself only, and that is the whole. Well, and I'd like to also cover that I own a college as well, is involved in this, and WICR is also. They don't have affiliation to what Bill Maloney said. He is mere opinion, and that is the sole reason why the post needed to be taken down. I mean, because it subjected a group of people with that included an unpopular opinion of just someone who, like I said, someone who doesn't know what those people are feeling. But continuing on, I know I talked about how I wanted to go for my next segment about how other social issues like that, like gay marriage, I would hope would go about in the same capacity. Well, all right, I gotta clear my thoughts first. So given the capacity and the weight that gay marriage essentially has, I feel like brings about other social issues. And I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that I will be going about this, but I feel like if I was going to start the list of other social issues that are bringing about, I think the war on drugs is a big one. I think, it's essentially a war within our country. I mean, I think legalization of marijuana is also a big step towards the drug wars. But I think once we understand that, backtracking first before I go into something like that and make relevant and ties to something like that, I want to kind of brief you on how I want to go about something like this. So I want to make gay marriage essentially, if I want to see gay marriage be successful, I mean, I know I'm not having an opinion about it, but the only opinion that I really want to have is that it brings light to social issues essentially as a whole. And I see social issues as something that should not be political, and I feel like social issues should have an equal rights essentially amendment as the African Americans had back in 1965 when they, with the amendment that they so hardly worked, really worked hard for. There we go. And I think that was a big social issue that was overcome, and I feel like over the years we've really gotten good at battening it down, and that's without thought of the Baltimore, Ferguson, all those riots, and that's without thought for those. And I think I will discuss that a little bit farther, and I think that will be the last stand of race equality that really this world will ever see, because I'll go into it later. But I think as a whole, those social issues are slowly taking staggering steps towards basically allowing this world to live in a socially just, yeah, that's a good way to put it, in a socially just universe. Because I feel like we have so many people in this world that have so many different viewpoints, and I feel like just allowing people to have that kind of freedom and allowing those people to, if it has no relevance towards them, they need to understand that it has no relevance towards them. And that's speaking from a sense of perfect. And that's speaking from a sense of me not being able to have an opinion in gay marriage because, well, I'm not gay. And for me, if I were to have an opinion on the drug war, I won't have an opinion on it because I don't use drugs. So now we're tying this back into medical marijuana. Now, when we look at medical marijuana, we see how such issues like that, it is a social issue. And I think that when we look at drugs as a whole, all drugs should be legalized. Now, if someone were to come out and say, well, I don't think they are, well, then you have to ask, how is that relevant in your life? Well, I have an uncle that's a drug addict. Well, I have a grandfather that has a drug addiction. But if you really look down to it, everyone's got an alcohol problem out here. I mean, in a sense, everyone drinks. at least I know. I mean, I drink the occasional beer. I mean, I'm not sure 21, but I really can't be stating statements like that, I think. But when you look at it, you have to see how there's always going to be loopholes in the system. Now, I always tie alcohol and cigarettes with the drug war because no matter which way you look at it, it's just a more popularized drug in my eyes. So if we were to legalize all drugs, essentially, we would basically categorize everything that, essentially changes your or alters your state of mind. We group them all together, and then we look at them as a whole. We go, all right, for me, I would say we legalize them all because it makes sense to. Why? Because I don't have a standpoint on it. And I think that's the best way to go about something, because if I know no knowledge of that drug, and I feel like once it's legalized, we'll have more knowledge of that drug, and essentially when it's more accessible, we understand not to do it. For me, cigarettes are something that is legalized, and the fact that they're legalized and we tax them so heavily, which makes it another negative in the realm of cigarettes, it makes me not want to buy them. Why? In my head, I see them as expensive addiction, so therefore I don't want to go about something like that. Now with medical marijuana, let's just talk about marijuana as a whole, because, I mean, I do come from a legalized state. You look at how... When you look at how, essentially... Oh, wow. The phone totally just missed my train of thought, but you know what? I'll attempt to regain my thought once again. So I apologize to all my viewers. But when you look at medical... That's right. We wanted to eliminate the term marijuana. So coming from a legalized state, I always kind of laughed at the idea that, like, you have recreational and then you have medical. And I always kind of laughed at the situation because, you don't essentially know how... like, why would you want to deviate those two? Because there's no different types of marijuanas. But you have to see that, like, it is expensive. You're smoking something, so it's obviously harmful. So why would you want to do something that's harmful to you? So I understand that there are medical benefits to essentially the high itself, but you need to understand that that even having an opinion in something like that of why you shouldn't do it because it's a drug is just kind of silly, because you understand that, well, doesn't make sense. But yeah, it's just, I mean, like, social issues as a whole, like, if you don't have any idea, don't have an opinion at all. And that's how it ties in all together. And that's why I categorize gay marriage, drug war, any social issue we should be able to overcome, because it's not a political matter. Therefore, the government should not have an opinion about it. And that's how I'm kind of rationalizing this in a sense, because it's just silly. It's just silly to have I call it an overbearing opinion on a social issue that you're trying to attempt to make political because you want to make that the right norm. And with norms, it's not about being right or wrong. It's about what's good and what's right. What is going to benefit the world as a whole. Now, I understand it's a silly idea to legalize all drugs or anything like that because it's detrimental to society, but I feel like it provides intelligence to the society when they understand that, it's a harmful drug. And now that it's more readily available, why would you want to go out and participate in something like that? I don't know. I guess in a way you participate in drugs, but but it's just silly, I don't have an opinion on social matters, really, because I feel there's no need to debate them. You allow them to happen, and you regroup them in a manner that is more, for me, I see it more as an idea that is progressive as opposed to anything else. But when you look at it as a whole, you have to see that it just doesn't make sense to have a strong standpoint against it. Why would you want to be against a social issue? That's something that doesn't make sense to me. Just allow it to happen, and then you reform under something that makes sense in the grand scheme of things. So when you look at it, I kind of want to go back to gay marriage, essentially, and how Bill really called it. All right, I will use some of the terms that he used just to really kind of reiterate and really strengthen a positive argument, not necessarily my argument, because, like I said, I don't have an opinion in the matter because I don't know what it's like. he called it monstrous. He called it atrocious, and then he used ties to the Roman Catholic Church about how wrong it is. And I was like, you're tying into things that just aren't good and aren't something that's positive in a sense, because you're describing something as monstrous. You're describing something as atrocious. And I really look at him and I go, dude, you have no idea what you're saying. And it's just like, why would you want to go about that? And then the other side, you're tying religion into an issue that, for me, and I hate to be the person to say this on air, but religion hasn't really had much of a, it's about as religion to me has about as same relevance as basically as a hierarchy, or like a king queen system, like someone that's like a dictatorship, a monarch, or a patriarch, or something like that. It's so irrelevant in today's life because we're not living in essentially a time where it's now. I mean, I do respect those that believe in something that is, when it comes to the afterlife, that is something that completely irrelevant. I mean, to the situation. But when you're talking about how you should live your life, given this will happen to you in the afterlife, I feel it gets you in a really sticky situation. And I feel like, most religions need to really specify on what they want to have. I mean, how they want to organize their life, essentially. But I feel like the way you organize your life is up to you. You do what makes you happy, and I feel like that's what, in my eyes, that's what God wants you to do, to be happy. I mean, I find that as the golden rule, the goal in life, or what is it? I think it's the meaning of life. I feel like, yeah, that's the meaning of life, is to be happy. I mean, it's do what does to make you happy. And once you do what makes you happy, you essentially achieve at life. You achieve at life. You're not all out the end game successful at life. We go about our lives to be happy. And if you're not happy, then you obviously need to change something. And when religion comes into the matter, you understand that, like, all right, well, we're living with a group of people, and I feel like that's great. You're among a group of people that believe in something. But that should be more relevant to the afterlife, in my eyes. I mean, if you choose to live a certain life that's more centralized, I guess is a good sense of the term. But you need to understand that, like, you can't just have an opinion about something. Well, hold on. Sorry. You can have your own opinion about something, whatever it may be. But you have to see that, don't throw it in other people's face, is a good way to put it. But just don't interfere with the mix of beautiful diversity that we have on this planet. Don't let other people be diverse. Let them believe something completely opposite from what you do. And I feel like that's what's going to make you a more happy person, because then you don't antagonize, then you don't go against someone else, and you just leave them alone. I mean, like, in a sense of the term, that you're not harmful. Come together as a happy individual that, promotes. So I don't see how being really burner about it is really a practical way, because I feel like the most ways that anything and everything occurs is when, we bring in hate, we bring in an antagonized sense of any terms or any issue, such as gay marriage. And I feel like that's when you're going to have people who have strong opinions go against you. And, that's scary. It's sad. And, I don't know how else to bring up the sense of the term, but you shouldn't be really... Excuse me real quick. You shouldn't be really, like, trying to get people against you, You want to argue with people. That's why I never understood that. I mean, when it came to debate with me, like speech and debate back in high school, I thought I grew from that, because when you do a debate, you have to learn how to argue the opposite side. You have to be able to understand the other point of viewpoint. And that's what makes someone grow. That's what makes someone live a little bit stronger every day, is that you learn how to argue from something that you don't agree with. And a lot of people find that scary, and I don't. I don't. I think that's perfectly fine. You need to be able to argue something like that. But to but to but to be able to not do that is something so irrational. It's something so like scary in the point that you don't know how to go about not antagonizing someone else, and it's sad. But I don't know. I kind of want to recap real quick what I discussed. I mean, I did somehow tie in medical marijuana and marijuana across the nation in this discussion. I also brought up other situations like the drug war and how all drugs should be legalized because it's such a social issue that no one really can have an opinion on it because they don't understand it. I mean, understanding a drug addiction is one thing, and that's something to that discretion. But you don't understand what I mean by they don't understand the drug war, is that they don't understand some of the factors that are just playing in because I mean people are getting hurt, people are dying over something like this, and if we just legalize it, we not only like diminish all harms to it, but we all as a whole we create a safer society with those things involved. So I mean, for me, playing it safe is always a better way to go about social norms and how norms should be adjusted towards society. And you know what? To continue recapping, I brought gay marriage from my last segment about how you really don't know what it's like is the biggest thing that I really discussed. But yeah, I mean you can't have an opinion about something that you don't know or don't know what it feels like to be objected. So yeah, this has been the second segment and the last segment of our show for the Political Gridiron. I'm sorry that it ended in such a scary in such a scary sense of the term. But yeah, I mean, you don't want something like that to end. And I'm gonna stick with the title of the show for next year because I mean, sorry, not sorry, Bill Maloney, but you brought some good attention to us. But any publicity is good publicity, I guess, in the sense, and he really brought about that. But I really want to talk about just for my last little few minutes, I really want to talk about Bill Maloney as a whole. I mean, he was really brave in coming onto the show, I think, and that was awesome. And it was really good that he came out because he knew what my opinion was. I mean, called me very liberal, but I think it was really great that he came out and did something like that with me for so long. But I think over time we realized how big of a clash it was, and not necessarily it wasn't unhealthy at all, but it got really scary about how his viewpoints really subjugated against so many different people. And I think that his statements over gay marriage was just basically the tipping point of his career, and it's sad to see that his political career ends in such a term. But yeah, I will be using the Political Gridiron title next year. I'm very excited about it, and so yeah, thank you guys, and have a good rest of the week.